Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel. If you've not been here before, you've been missing out. My name is Elizabeth, and I am your friendly hillbilly host. And this is Hillbilly Crime. Okay, so we have got a big show tonight. Everybody is already here and is ready. Let's see. Butterfly Kisses says, I love me some hillbilly crime. Elizabeth worked hard to bring us great true stories. Everybody who joins in tonight, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And make sure that you hit your little notification bell so that way it always lets you know when we go live. I think Sweet Tater's going to try and jump on here a little bit later. She had a class that started at 7. Everybody says they're ready. Jessica's ready. Thank you for being here. Okay, let's jump right on into it. Okay, so everybody that's been following this case with Mickey Stines and Judge Kevin Mullins, September 19th was the day that Mickey went into the courthouse and unalived Judge Mullins. 3 days before that, he went and sat for a deposition for the civil suit regarding Ben Fields. Ben Fields was the deputy, the sheriff's department deputy / court security. And he also did house arrest. Sabrina Adkins has filed a civil lawsuit against Ben, Mickey, and the house arrest company for the sexual abuse that Ben Fields had perpetrated upon 3, I think. Ned Pillersdorf is representing 2 of them, and then a third one is represented by somebody else. We got our hands on the deposition, y'all. I got all 3 of them. And we are going to read. Now, I've already read most of Mickey's. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am absolutely shocked. Number 1, at DOJ, if the Department of Justice is the entity that actually does the polygraphs for law enforcement, which is what it was, if I remember correctly, that's who we're going to see did the polygraph. Yeah, Ben admitted when he went and had a polygraph done for his job to become a deputy, he had to go take a polygraph for the hiring. The things that he admitted to blow me away. That because then Mickey gets a report from the polygraph examiner saying if he passed or if he failed. He didn't lie about it. That's why he passed. Ah, interesting. Okay, guys. Deposition of Mickey Stines. Sabrina Adkins et al. Is the plaintiff versus Ben Fields et al. Defendants. And this is the deposition of Mickey Stines. Something else that I found very interesting is the players in this deposition. And if you live here, you know exactly who we're talking about. The deposition of Mickey Stines was taken on behalf of the plaintiffs on September 16th, 2024 at the law offices of Ned Pillersdorf, 124 West Street, Prestonsburg, Kentucky. Said deposition was taken pursuant to notice previously filed and is to be used for purposes of discovery and the civil suit. Okay, now look here. We've got on behalf of the plaintiff, Bethany Baxter and Ned Pillersdorf. Look who's on behalf of the defendants, y'all. Honorable Jonathan Shaw and Daniel Dotson. Ding, 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 ding. Daniel Dotson, he was there, guys. So that explains something to me. Seeing him on this, he was there that day of the deposition in person. He wasn't there via Zoom. He was there in person with Mickey. So the rumors and stuff, the information that several of us have heard that Mickey went and saw Daniel before he went over to see the judge, that gives a little bit more credence to that. Okay. On behalf of the defendants, Jonathan Shaw and Daniel Dotson, and then via Zoom was Jason Williams and Don Jones. And then also present via Zoom was Sabrina Adkins. And then it gives kind of like the pages here, the index. And here we go. Whereupon Mickey Stines, the witness, having been duly sworn by the court reporter, was examined and testified as follows. Now remember, this is under oath, y'all. When you testify in a deposition, it's just like you were up on the stand in a courtroom. You swear to tell the truth and the whole truth. All right. So Ms. Baxter, Sheriff Stines, my name is Bethany Baxter. I represent Sabrina Adkins and the estate of Jennifer Hill on this case, and I'm going to take your deposition today. So my first question for you, have you ever given a deposition before? Mickey answers, years ago in a car wreck case, I believe, 20 years ago. Question, okay, that is the only other occasion? Mickey says, yes, ma'am. Okay. I'm just going to talk about some ground rules. As you know, you are under oath. I'm going to be asking you some questions today. As the day goes on, sometimes my questions get longer and maybe a little harder to understand. Don't be shy about asking me to rephrase something or repeat something. I am happy to do that. If you don't ask me to rephrase or repeat a question, I'm going to assume that you understood my question and that your answer is responsive to my question. Is that fair? He says, yes. She says, I am happy to take breaks today and so forth. If you want to talk to your attorney or go to the bathroom or whatever you want to do, my only request is that if I have asked you a question, I would ask that you respond to that question before we take the break. Okay? He says, yes. Okay. She says, the other thing that I will say is we have got a court reporter here who is taking down everything that is being said. So I am going to ask you to try to make verbal responses instead of shaking your head or because that gets confusing when we come back to read the record down the line, okay? And he says, yes. She says, okay. What did you do to prepare for your deposition today? Mr. Shaw says, she doesn't want to know about any conversations you have had with me or with your personal attorney. And he answers and says, okay. So I looked over Sabrina Adkins' deposition. I attended Ben Fields and Patty Stockham's. Question, you read Patty Stockham's deposition? He says, yes. She says, any other documents that you reviewed? And he said, the interrogatories. She says, the interrogatories that you produced in this case? And Mr. Shaw, that's his lawyer. We are not for sure whose. He looked at some discovery, written discovery in the process. And she questions, okay, anything else that you can recall? And Mickey says, don't believe so. She says, where were you born and raised? Mickey says, born in Whitesburg, Kentucky. She says, in town? At the hospital. Okay, where did you grow up? I grew up in Fleming Neon. Okay, I don't think that I asked you. Will you state your full name for the record, your legal name? He says, yes, Sean Mickey Stines. Question. So when your parents brought you home from the hospital, they took you back to Fleming Neon? He says, yes. Question. And how long did you live in Fleming Neon? Answer. 19 years. Question. Then where did you move after you left Fleming Neon? He says McRoberts, and that's where he lived now before this all happened. Question. Did you move there with your parents or did you move there by yourself? He says, my wife. She says, so you got married at 19 years old? Answer. Actually, when we moved there, we wasn't married. Question. Okay. What is your wife's name? He says, Caroline Stines. What is her maiden name? He says, Gibson. Where is she from? She's from McRoberts originally. Okay. How old are you? I'm 43. Okay. So I know you just said your spouse's maiden name. Any other surnames of folks in your family in Letcher County aside from Stines or Gibson? He says, I'm not really sure what you're asking me. She says, last names is what I mean by that. Like, what was your mother's maiden name? He says, Stines. Okay, what was your father's last name? Mickey says, don't know who my biological dad is. She says, okay, fair. Did you go to college? Southeast Community College. They're in Whitesburg? Yes. Okay, did you graduate from Fleming Neon High School? Yes. What did you study at Southeast? Just basics. I only got 26 hours. Okay, and were you going to school full time? There's many typos and mistakes in this deposition, just to forewarn you. They should have had a proofreader. And were you going to school full time? Yes, and I had a job. Question. Okay, what was your job? Answer. I worked at Neon BP. I'm assuming that's where him and Caroline met, was at the BP, because, you know, she's got a super high administrative job, like in payroll and all that. So if he worked there that long ago and that's when they got together, I'd say that's where him and Caroline met, was at the BP. But I'm just assuming. Could be completely wrong. Okay, question. Okay, what was your employment after you left Southeast Community College? He says, well, it was the Neon BP for a little while. Okay, what about after that? I went to the Fleming Neon Police Department. This is very interesting, too. Mickey got around all of the training that a police officer or a deputy for the sheriff's department would normally have. You guys will hear it. Question. Okay, what year did you start with the Fleming Neon Police Department? 2001, I believe. How long did you work at Fleming Neon Police Department? 7 months. Why did you leave that job? Cutbacks. What was your position with the Fleming Neon Police Department? I was a patrol officer. Okay, so cutbacks. You lost your job? What did you do after that? I drew unemployment for some time. I don't know exact date. What after that? I went to work for the sheriff's office. Okay, who was the sheriff when you went to work for the sheriff's office? Steve Banks. Question. Steve Banks. And what year would that have been? Answer, 2002. Was the training that you received as a deputy sheriff different from the training that you received as a patrol officer? Do you want me to repeat that question? Yeah. And then his lawyer chimes in, Mr. Shaw, and says, are you talking about, did he go to the academy twice? And then the lawyer says, question, do you have to go to the academy as a police officer? Mickey says yes. Question, and so that the same academy you would go to as a new deputy sheriff? Answer, let's talk. So Mickey said that to his attorney. And then Mr. Shaw says, yeah, let's talk. And Miss Baxter says, okay, we can take a break. They took a break. Question. I think the last question that I had was the academy training that you received as a patrol officer. The same as the academy training that you would have received as Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy? Answer. When I was policing at Neon, I got laid off because of money. They couldn't send me to the academy, so I actually never attended. Okay, so did you attend the academy in 2002 when you went to work for the Letcher County Sheriff's Office? His lawyer jumps in and says, well, that was the point of confusion. There are different types of academy training. Ms. Baxter, that is what I'm trying to figure out. Mr. Shaw, Mickey's attorney, says, he went to the academy, but not, let me explain his academy training. Question. Let's let him testify for himself. That's the female attorney. Answer. And this is Mickey. So the deputy sheriff has an academy that's 20 weeks long. Court security officers, remember we learned this in Ben Fields's interview and the investigation into him. Court security officers have an academy that's only 2 weeks. And you have different types of training for both. So when I was initially hired for Stephen Banks, they put me through pre-pops. And I was about to work the road and work the court and stuff. And she says, okay, so did both the deputy training? So you did both the deputy training and the CSO training? And Mickey answers and says, I've never attended the academy. That is what you first asked when I first with, and then he trails off. You have got a year to attend. She says, okay. And Mickey says, after that, I worked for Stephen Banks for 7 months. Danny Webb came in. I worked the road and court for Danny. During that time, Danny comes to me and says, you says, see, they really needed a proofreader. This is a deposition. So that really kind of looks bad that there's so many typos in this. Anyway, Danny comes to me and says, you says, do you want to be a road officer or court officer? And I said, I'll be a court security. And he said, well, we can get you grandfathered in. And I had to take all of their steps to be a court security officer. Now, grandfathered in, my boys' dad, he had worked at a carpet store for 17 years. New owners came in and took over this carpet store, and they put things into effect like a drug test for new employees and stuff like that. Well, their dad didn't have to do any of that. He didn't have to take a drug test because he had been there for 17 years. So that's what they called his too. He was grandfathered in. So that's what they're meaning by this. He was grandfathered in, meaning he had already been working there. So they didn't make him do any of that stuff, which I think is a big bunch of malarkey. Thank you to whoever donated. Yay! Thank you, honey. Thank you. And I'm not watching any of my thing here, y'all. So if anybody needs me, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, let me get back over here. And he said, we can get you grandfathered in. And I had to take all of their steps to be a court security officer. Question. Okay, I just want to make sure that I understand. So in 2002 is when you first went to work for the Letcher County Sheriff's Office? Yes. Well, why don't you just tell me what training you did when you first came on board? Well, answer, This is Mickey. When I originally went for neon, I had to take all of the pre-pops. That is the fitness. Ms. Baxter, sorry, we didn't turn the audio back on. Question, pre-pops, okay? And he says, once you do that, you can take the other training at the academy. Neon laid me off, and I didn't get to go to that one. She says, okay, that makes sense. So did you end up doing that training after you went to Letcher County Sheriff's Office? Not the full 20-week academy, no, ma'am. Why not? The position they put me in, the state, didn't require me to attend that. And what was that position? The court security officer. She says, well, that's helpful. So then when Webb came in 7 months later, I think that I understood you to say that he asked you what position that you wanted and what was your response to him. And let me stop that right there for a second. Now, on the page before that, he said that he had been working the road and security for them, and he had no training. He had no sheriff's department training. So they put him out there on the road without no training, without no deputy training. I mean, I'm just saying. This is kind of the thing that I had been saying for a very long time. It's a culture. And they don't hire people who actually have maybe ethical training or, maybe some ethics courses, a degree, something that shows that you have studied and that you have a little bit of knowledge. You might have a little bit of credentials behind your name. Mickey didn't have any of that. He didn't have any of that. Blows me away. And it appears that they got around all of the training that he could have went to. I don't know. It's just something that I noticed, y'all. Okay. That is helpful. So then when Webb came in 7 months later, I think that I understood you to say that he asked you what position that you wanted and what was your response to him. When he came in, that was 2003, I believe. I worked the road and court security. See, he worked the road. How was he a road officer with no training when he never even went to the academy? Years later, he asked me, do you want to go to the academy? And I said no. So years later, I mean, it just blows me away. I told you, nobody's looking, y'all. There ain't nobody above them. Ain't nobody looking. I'm going to stay in court. And he said, okay. Question, okay. Do you have to do the 20 weeks of deputy training to work the road? Answer, can we talk? He said that to his lawyer, I'm assuming. And she says, just if you know. And Mr. Shaw, his lawyer, peeps in and says, just for the record, and I don't know how long ago it was, he suffers from California encephalitis. So when he is under stress, sometimes it causes some issues. Ms. Baxter, I have never heard of that. Mr. Shaw, it is something that you get from tick bites, basically. And question, well, if we need to take more breaks, I'll be happy to do that. And if you don't know the answer, and then trails off, and Mr. Shaw jumps in and says, and that is fine to say that you don't know. Let me talk with him for a second. We will be right back. Miss Baxter, off the record. Then they took a break. She says, back on the record, I think that I was asking you if you had to do the 20 weeks of deputy training to work the roads. He says, yes. Question, but you did not do that training under Sheriff Banks, correct? He says, no. She says, did you ever get that training under Sheriff Webb? He says, no. She says, okay. Did you get that training after that? After that, you became sheriff? No. Question. What was the time period you were working as deputy sheriff? Mr. Shaw. And you mean court security officer, right? She says, Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy Court Security Officer. You said that you started in 2003, correct? He says, no, 2002. She says, 2002. Okay, correct. Was that until that you became sheriff? And he says, yes, that was. I took over in 2019. The election was in 2018. She says, okay, and we will come back to some of that in a minute. Any other jobs that you have held prior to 2019? Yeah, I worked for East Kentucky Correctional Services. Okay, aside from that, any other positions? Because that was the house arrests company. He says, I was a security guard at the hospital. She says, okay, any other positions besides that? He says, at one time, I was a rug sample gatherer for drug court. She says, okay, anything else? He says, to the best of my knowledge, that is it. Okay, we will talk about some of those later. Have you ever been named as a defendant in litigation? Yes. Was that the car accident case that you referenced earlier? He says, I believe that I was just a witness in it. She says, okay, what was the litigation where you were named as a defendant? He says, it would have been, and Mr. Shaw, his lawyer, jumps in and says, Congleton. He says, yes. The lady lawyer says, what was the name? He says, Alicia Congleton. Now remember, she was the female deputy who worked under Danny Webb before Mickey. She campaigned against Mickey. Well, she didn't really campaign against Mickey. She campaigned for a different deputy who was running for sheriff against Mickey. And there were a lot of very questionable things that were going on at the end of Danny Webb's administration. They had laid off almost, well, I don't know about that. I shouldn't say that. There were very few deputies that were still working when he went out because they said they didn't have any money. And they were trying to get, it was a great big thing with our fiscal court and our judge executive, Jim Ward, who was at the time our judge executive. And they were wanting more money to go to the people who were retiring. So it was kind of, Jim Ward said that it was basically a second retirement for these officers. And it was people who had been there forever, like Eugene Sloan. I think Bert Sloan was even working for the sheriff's department back then before he became jailer, before he ran for jailer. I'm not sure who all was there. It was Alicia. There was a whole bunch of them. Well, Alicia did not get, she didn't get kept over into Mickey's administration. I don't know what all was going on in that, but I know she sued him. She filed a civil suit against Mickey, and I'm pretty sure it was dismissed. But that's what they're talking about here. What was the name? Alicia Congleton, and she's our school resource officer at Jenkins High School. And we love her. We love Alicia. Hands down. Okay, question. And did she work for the sheriff's office? Answer, yes. Question. Okay, aside from that case, any other matters? He says, not that I can think of, no. Question. Have you ever been accused of workplace sexual harassment or sex discrimination? He says, no. Have you ever been responsible for investigating sexual harassment or sexual misconduct or sex discrimination in any position that you have held? Mr. Shaw, He must look at Mickey and say, "Have you? Or we can talk for a second if you want to." And Mickey says, "I'm not understanding her question." And she says, "So think of all the jobs that you have had in your lifetime, including your job as sheriff. Have part of the duties of any of those jobs been to investigate sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, or sex discrimination?" And Mickey's lawyer chimes in again. Mr. Shaw, and says, "I think that she's including this case too. What happened when you received work about this case?" Answer, "Okay," that's what Mickey says. Mickey's lawyer, "Have you had other incidents of allegations?" And then the female lawyer says, "If you have questions, I would rather rephrase the question. I know you're trying to be helpful, Jonathan. Do you understand the question?" Mickey says, "No, not really." She says, "Okay, let's start here. Have you ever, in your capacity as sheriff, have you ever investigated a complaint of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct?" Mickey's lawyer chimes in again. "Do you mean him individually? Has he investigated?" And she says, "Has he, as sheriff, ever investigated sexual harassment or sexual misconduct?" Mickey says, "Can we talk for a second? I am not." His lawyer says, "Yeah." They took a break. His lawyer comes back and says, "For clarification, I think that I understand what you are saying. Are you talking about internal allegations within the department, or are you talking about somebody from the street coming in and saying my daddy is sexually abusing me?" Question, this is the female lawyer. "I am talking about in your role as sheriff related to employment, employees, sexual harassment, sexual misconduct. Does that make sense now?" Mickey says, "Yes." "So have you ever been responsible for conducting such an investigation?" He says, "This is the only one." She says, "Okay." And Mickey says, "I immediately reported it, took action, reported it to the state police. They declined. And I talked to the Commonwealth attorney, which would have been Edison Banks, and county attorney, which would have been Jamie Hatton. And the state police declined to investigate it." Ben Fields is what we're talking about. And if you guys remember, in the Attorney General's investigation, when he asked all these questions, when he asked, or when he wrote his report, they said that this lawyer, I think it was this Bethany Baxter, is the one who sent the referral to the Kentucky Attorney General's office requesting an investigation. In his report, he said then he contacted Edison Banks, who said then you need to talk to this one, and then said you need to talk to Bert, and you need to talk to Jamie, and you need to talk to Michael Watts. This ain't matching to me. There's a couple things in here that don't match what the Kentucky Attorney General's investigation. It don't match. Okay. And I mean, surely to God, I'm not the only one that noticed it. Question. And I will ask you more questions about this case later. I was just wondering, have you at any other time investigated sexual harassment? Mr. Williams. Sorry, could you please turn on the audio for those on Zoom? Miss Baxter, sorry about that. Question. I think I heard you say that you have never investigated sexual harassment or sexual misconduct aside from the employee Ben Fields. Is that correct? Mr. Shaw. Objection. He said that he referred that to KSP. Oh, okay. Let's ask it this way. Are the allegations about Ben Fields the only time that you have ever been made aware of an allegation of sexual misconduct by a sheriff's office employee? Mr. Shaw. Since he's been sheriff? Miss Baxter. Correct. Mr. Dotson. Wonderful for you to make an appearance. I am not sure that I understand the question, and I know why that he is hesitating not to answer. Good for you, Daniel. Question. You became aware at some point, that Ben Fields had been accused of sexual misconduct while he was a Letcher County Sheriff's deputy, correct? Answer. Yes. Question. Has there ever been some other instance while you were sheriff that you became aware of a similar allegation related to some other employee? His lawyer, Mr. Shaw, jumps in. That is employed by you? I think you prefaced it to the best of your recollection. Question. That is all that I can ask, to the best of your recollection. Mickey's lawyer, Mr. Shaw, jumps in. If you recall something, tell her. And if you don't, then you don't recall. Answer. Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I don't recall. Question. Okay. Have you ever been terminated by an employer? I don't mean laid off. I mean terminated for cause? No. Okay. Have you ever been disciplined by an employer? Yes. Who was that employer? Sheriff Webb. What was the discipline? Shave. You hadn't shaved? No. Anything else that you can think of? Not to my knowledge. Okay. Have you ever worked for the Letcher County Jail? No. I want to get a better feel for your job duties with East Kentucky Correction Solutions. Am I correct that you worked, and I am going to call it EKCS today for short. You worked for EKCS at the same time that you were a deputy sheriff, correct? Yes. Okay. How did you come to get that job? Judge Wood and Harold Bolin. Who are they? Judge James T. Wood and County Attorney Harold Bolin. Was Wood district or circuit? District. So Judge Wood was before Kevin Mullins. Did they offer you the job? Mickey says, they came to me and said, we got a job opportunity for you, house arrest, if you want it. Question. Okay. Do you know why they were the ones to approach you about that job? Mickey says, I guess because they worked that court. They had already worked that court before I even started working there, and they needed somebody. Question. Okay. Did they work for EKCS themselves? No, ma'am. Okay. So who was the first person with EKCS who you met? Was Patty. Okay. And what do you recall about that initial meeting? I had to go to Pikeville and take some training. What kind of training? Well, she basically brought me in and showed me all of the paperwork and showed me how to hook everything up, showed me how all the equipment worked, how to put the leg strap together with the clamps. I believe that was it. She says, okay. And I believe Miss Stockham, Patty Stockham, testified that you worked for EKCS for about 20 years. Does that sound correct? He says, no. She says, oh, how long did you work for EKCS? 14 to 16 approximately. She says, years? He says, yes. So would you have started in, what would that have been? 2005 about? Yeah, maybe 2004. Okay. How were you paid for that work? Ding, 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 ding. Contract labor. I believe once a month I would get a certain amount commission. And then at the end of the year, I would get a 1099. So you were paid on commission? Yeah. Do you recall how that commission was calculated? Per person that was on I got $3 a day and 25 for a hookup. Do you recall roughly how much you would have made a year to year at that job? No. For example, Ben Fields in 2021 made over $30,000. Did you ever make that much in a single year? And he was working 3 jobs. Mickey was. You did? Yes. Was that about the average that you would make is 30,000? No, it would be different every year. But you are saying that there was years that you made 30,000? Yes. She missed a question there. I would have asked, were there years you made less than 30,000? Because that wasn't exactly clear there. Okay. So you just described the training that you got up in Pikeville when you first got hired. Were you trained on any annual basis after that initial training? At one time, while I was doing house arrest, we got a different type of equipment. She came in and trained me on that equipment, just the hookup, the process, and all of that. Aside from that training, was there any additional training you got from EKCS? I don't believe so. Okay. I guess as far as persons on home incarceration, was it your responsibility to make sure that they abided by the court order relating to the terms of that home incarceration? Mickey says, what was your question again? Sorry. She says, so for the folks on home incarceration, was it your responsibility as home incarceration officer to make sure they abided by the terms of the home incarceration? Mickey says, the terms of the home incarceration, yes. She says, okay. And the terms of the home incarceration, who sets those? Mickey says, the court and the contract. She says, so the judge can say this person is allowed to go here or there. Is that what you mean by that might be in the court order? He says, yes, and the statute. She says, okay, anything else that kind of would dictate the terms of someone's home incarceration aside from the statute and the judge's order? Mickey's lawyer chimes in, Mr. Shaw. Do you know the answer? Well, I didn't do a lot of them, but judges do verbal, Mickey said. And the female lawyer says, what do you mean by judges do verbal? Mr. Shaw, Mickey's lawyer, says, do you want to give her an example? Mickey says, so when I have violation, I would report it to the judge. And at times, they would say, put them in jail. And I would call down to the jail. Question, okay. And would you be the one then to transport that person to the jail? Mickey says, a lot of mine was at the courthouse. Question, so the violation was discussed in the presence of the person on home incarceration? Mickey says, yes. So is that what you mean when you said judges did verbal? He says, yes. She says, do you remember signing any kind of employment contract with EKCS related to your employment with them? Mickey says, what was the question again? Sorry. Did you ever sign any kind of employment contract or agreement with EKCS related to your work for them? Not to my knowledge, no. She says, was it ever the case that during the time that you were working for EKCS, were you also the court security officer? He said, yes. Question, I'm going to use the term bailiff because I understand that to be the same thing. Is that fair? Mickey says, yes. So were you the bailiff in district court or circuit court? Mainly district. Okay. So were there ever times when you would be working as a bailiff in district court and also put someone's ankle monitor on? Mickey says, no, I had them come after my job. She says, okay, what do you mean after your job? Mickey said, after court security. Like time of day? What time of day would that be? Mickey says, I always had them to report at 4:30. Okay, so you would have them come back at 4:30 to get the ankle monitor? Is that what your testimony is? Mickey says, if they was there in court and the judge took them off and they had everything, I would go ahead and take the equipment then. Question. Okay, what about collecting fees? Would you ever collect fees from folks at the same time as you were working as a bailiff in district court? Mickey says, can I ask you a question? She says, I would rather that you answer my question. And if you don't recall, that is fine too. Was there ever a time that you can recall when you were working as a bailiff in district court and would have collected fees, during that time period when you were working as a bailiff? Daniel Dotson chimes in. Counsel, do you mean during the day or do you mean the same month? Brilliant, Daniel. Question. Before 4:30? Answer. If they was in court and the judge did an arraignment and they were on house arrest and the judge said pre-trial in a month, and that was a Wednesday, and they said, Mickey, I've got the money, I would say, hand it here. Yeah, and I would go ahead and take it. Question. And give them a receipt, I guess. Mickey says, yes, all monies that was collected was wrote out in a receipt. Question. Was all monies collected in cash? Answer. I'm just trying to remember if I took a check. I've done it a long time. I'm not sure if I ever took a check. Question. Mostly money? Mostly. Question. Do you know whether there is any sort of agreement between EKCS and Sheriff Webb or Sheriff Banks related to your work for EKCS? Answer. No. Do you recall there being any policies about secondary employment for Letcher County Sheriff's deputies when you were working there as a deputy? Mickey said, I had to get permission from Sheriff Webb. Okay, what did that look like, getting permission? He just give verbal. Verbal permission? Yes. And what Sheriff Banks? Do you recall? Or was that before that you started working for EKCS? Probably. Yes. Okay. Aside from you getting permission from Sheriff Webb, was there any relationship between EKCS and the county or the sheriff's office about deputies performing that work? No. So during that time period that you were working for EKCS, what would you do when Miss Stockham would told you that someone on home incarceration was out of range? Just walk me through an example. What that would look like. Mickey says, so when she would call me and give me the details out of range, what would happen is she would tell me if she called them or not. I would try to make contact with them or next of kin. Okay, how would you contact them? By phone. What would happen next? If I made contact with them, I would ask them and see where they was at by phone and what was going on, some kind of answer, why they were out of range. Question. And would be a satisfactory response? And what, see, they missed the word there, I guess. And what would be a satisfactory response to that question? Mickey. Someone could tell me, hey, I'm at the doctor's office and I forgot to tell Patty. And I'd be like, okay, you have got to bring in an excuse. Once you get to that office, time in and time out, and you bring that to me every Thursday. Question. Okay, what would be an example of a not satisfactory response? Mickey says, I am up at Joe's just hanging out, having coffee. Question. So what would you do if you got that kind of response? I would tell them that they have to go home, and then I would contact the courts. Question. And who would you contact at the courts? The judge. what would you tell the judge? We have a violation and what the violation was. Question. And then what would happen next? Mickey says, they would sometimes say, get a warrant. Okay. Sometimes they would say, I will issue a bench warrant. Or, I guess, or just give them a break, because it doesn't make it clear here, but the next question does, or the next couple does. That would be the third option, to just give them a break. Mickey says, yeah, if they went back home. If they went back home, just give them a break. Are you joking? Question. Okay. Did you have the description to decide? And there's another that's supposed to say, I'm assuming here, discretion, but they put in the word description. So this is really not cool to have so many typos in a deposition. Okay. Did you have the description to decide when someone should or shouldn't be given a break in that scenario? But it was supposed to say discretion, I'm assuming. No. So only the judge can make that decision? Yes. Was there any documentation of those communication and that decision making, or was that done verbally? Verbally. Mr. Shaw, Mickey's lawyer, says, just for clarification, do you mean, did he create documentation? The court may have generated some type of warrant. Question. Right. Yeah. I guess when you were working as bailiff, who was the district court judge before Mullins? Judge Wood. I think that you referenced earlier that there was a 2-week training that you got as a part of that CSO position. Mickey says, no. There is a 2-week that you get to that. I was grandfathered in where that I started so many years. When you started working as a police and CSO, you could get grandfathered in if you started years before the state required that. Mickey he had zero training. None. And he's held those jobs for that many years. Just blows me away. And everybody down there knew that. They did. Everybody down there knew that. So you were saying at the time that you became a CSO, the state didn't even have any kind of training for that position? No. Question. Do you recall when that training went into effect? No. What about Letcher County Sheriff's Office policies? Do you recall any training about policies specific to Letcher County Sheriff's Department? Mickey says, can I ask you a question? Mr. Shaw, when before he was sheriff, after he was sheriff? Question. I mean, once you became sheriff, it was your responsibility to enforce these policies? Mickey says, yes. Question. I am talking about before, when you were a deputy. Do you recall any training about Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies? Mickey says, yes, we received a policy manual. Question. What would that training consist of? I don't know detail by detail, but I generalized myself with the policy book. He generalized himself with the policy book. Okay, so there is a policy book. Yes. Do you remember in the interview with the Kentucky Attorney General's office, they said there was no policy book manual. So that's another one that I found that's a little bit off. I can't recall. Question. I've got an exhibit. I think this was produced by you in Discovery, and it references a 2008 policy manual for the Letcher County Sheriff's Department. Do you see that? Mickey says yes. So I guess back in 2008, was this the first time that Letcher County developed a policy manual? He says, I don't know. Would you have signed a form like this as a deputy sheriff to the best of your recollection? I don't know. Okay, you testified earlier that you recall receiving a policy manual, but do you remember signing anything related to having read or received that policy manual? I can't remember. Okay, since you became sheriff, is it your practice to have deputies sign something acknowledging receipt of the policies of the sheriff's department? Mickey says, yes. Way to go, y'all. Y'all are going to just fall out when we get further down here. Question. Are they required to sign that at the time they are hired? Or when do they sign that? Yes. Okay. As part of your work with EKCS, did you actually physically go out to people's homes to get them hooked up on home incarceration? No, not to hook them up. Okay. Between the time that a person is hooked up and taking off of home incarceration, would you ever be at their physical home address? Mickey says, only if they had a violation and I contacted a family member, said, hey, they are gone. They ran off. They cut the ankle bank. I might go out sometime and retrieve that. Most of the time, I have asked the family to come and get it and bring it to me. Sorry. Question. So, when you were working as a deputy sheriff, did you have a sheriff's department vehicle? On and off, sometimes. Okay, I guess would there ever been an instance that you would have driven the sheriff's department vehicle out to retrieve one of those home incarceration devices? Yes. Were there any policies about how you were or were not supposed to use sheriff's department property? Answer, or this is Mickey. Can I ask you a question? Mr. Shaw, yeah. They took a break. Mickey's lawyer says, can we get some clarification on time frames when you were talking about? Question, yeah. When you were a deputy sheriff, were there any policies on how deputy sheriffs were or were not supposed to use sheriff's department equipment? Mickey says, policy changes all of the time, but at times, yes. Why would that policy change all of the time? Mickey says, I just said policies would change all of the time. Well, specifically policies about using sheriff's department equipment and property like car. Do you recall that policy ever changing? I don't recall. Question. Well, do you remember there being a policy when you were deputy sheriff? Yes, I do believe there was a policy. So you recall what that policy was? Mickey says, we can't. And then Mickey's lawyer says, just tell her. Mickey says, can I ask the question again? Or can you ask the question again? The policy regarding sheriff's department equipment and property that you recall. What do you recall that policy being? Mr. Shaw. At the time that he was deputy, not since he's been the sheriff? She says, yes, exactly. Mickey says, yeah, you can't use department stuff to do other jobs. Question. Right. And so you talked a little bit about your work with EKCS. You were also security guard at the hospital. Question? Question mark. He says, yes. Tell me about that job. When did you start that? I don't remember the dates. Okay. It was while you were a deputy sheriff? Yes. Would you wear your deputy sheriff uniform when you did that job? Or would you wear some other uniform? Some other uniform. Okay. Did you get any kind of approval from Sheriff Webb to perform that work? Yes. Was that approval documented in anywhere? Mickey says, can I have a break? Sure, it's going to be a long day. They took a break. Question. Okay, we were talking about your work as a security guard at the hospital, and you testified that there was only a verbal approval from Sheriff Webb for you to perform that service. Yes? Okay. Did you use any Letcher County Sheriff's Department equipment or property in performing that job? Yes. What did you use? A gun, duty belt, and a cruiser at times. Okay. To be the security guard at the hospital? Yes. And was that a position that you were paid directly by the hospital, or did you get paid through the sheriff's department? No, the hospital paid us. Paid you directly? Who is us? Other workers. Other deputy sheriffs? No, other workers at the hospital. The security agency there at the hospital is what I'm talking about. Question. Were you the only Letcher County Sheriff's deputy who was working as a security guard at the hospital, if you can recall? I don't recall. Question. You also mentioned doing some rug sample gathering for the drug court. Yes. Same question. Did you use any Sheriff's Department property or equipment to perform that job? I can't recall. What was the time period when you were performing that rug sample gather job? I think that's another typo there. Answer. That job was kind of unique because with rug court back years ago when Judge Wood was there, they would have me sample people right there in the courthouse. Okay. And were you paid for that job? Let's see. And were you paid for that job AOC, I guess? Or did AOC pay the sheriff's department to pay you? No, I only did that job for like 2 weeks. Okay. I got one pay. And to be honest, I can't remember who it came from because I didn't enjoy that job. Okay. What about the security guard at the hospital? What was the time period you were performing that job? There was multiple shifts. It was all question. Years? How many years did you that job? How many years did you that job? I can't remember the years. Okay, more than 1 year? Yes. Why did you decide to run for sheriff? It has been my lifelong dream, even as a kid, to the sheriff. Another typo. To be a sheriff, or maybe it wasn't another typo. It might have just been the way he answered it. It has been my lifelong dream, even as a kid, to the sheriff. Question. To be a sheriff? Mickey says, yeah. My mama and mother told me when I was a kid that I talked about being a sheriff. Question. And think that you testified earlier that you won the election in 2018 and you became a sheriff in 2019, correct? Yes. So before you became sheriff, I guess after you won the election and before you became sheriff, did you make a decision to hire Ben Fields? Here we go, y'all. Here we go. Let me stop before I even go on. Let's go over here and see. Everybody. Oh, we got a ton in here, you guys. I can't go through comments. We got too many people in here. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll get back to it. All right, here we go. This is the revelation that I about fell out in the floor about. Okay. Ben Fields was hired by Sheriff Webb, Mickey said. Question. Right. He was hired right as Webb was going out and you were coming in. So was it Webb's decision to hire or was it your decision? Now remember, there was a huge uproar when Webb was going out of office. There was a huge fight. That's when Alicia Congleton filed her lawsuit against Mickey. So all of this, if you live here, you were here at the time that this was going on, pay attention. He was hired right as Webb was going out and you were coming in. This is the female lawyer. So was it Webb's decision to hire or was it your decision? Mickey says, I gave a recommendation. Okay. And you recommended Fields to Webb, I guess. Yes. Okay. Did you terminate any other deputy sheriffs to make room for Ben Fields to have that job? Because remember, they didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. They were all being put on leave or whatever they were doing. They were so mad that they did not get the fiscal court to give them all that money they were asking for. And we went back, we watched one of the interviews with Jim Ward, who was our judge executive. Jim said that the fiscal court had provided the sheriff's department, Danny Webb's sheriff's department, over $2.7 million, I think is what the number was. I have to go check that number, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. Fiscal court voted no. They were not giving it to the sheriff's department. And when Danny went out, he went out without that money. They did not get what they were asking for. Okay. Did you terminate any to make room for Ben Fields to have that job? No, I didn't terminate anybody. Okay. Did any other deputy sheriffs leave the sheriff's department at the same that Sheriff Webb left? See, they really need to have this absolutely correct because every single word matters. It matters what context it's in. I mean, that's why they have transcripts. This stuff is important. And to have it all jacked up with errors is not good. Did any other deputy sheriffs leave the sheriff's department at the same that Sheriff Webb left? Answer. Restate the question, please. Question. I will be a little more specific. I think from some of your discovery, you said prior to 2019, someone named Keith Smith and someone named Joshua Peace, Pease, had worked for the sheriff's department. Yes. When did they leave and why, if you know, Mr. Shaw? If you know. Mickey. I don't know why they left. Josh Peace resigned and Keith Smith, I don't know. Question. Was there anybody else who was hired right about that time that Ben Fields was hired? Billy Jones, maybe, was the SRO. He's our new sheriff. He's the sheriff that our judge executive decided, or he's the school resource officer who worked under Mickey, who was part of that sheriff's department. He was made sheriff after Mickey resigned. So Billy Jones is our new sheriff. Maybe was the SRO. Is that someone that works in the school? Yes. Did you recommend Billy Jones? You got me kinda. She's got me kinda confused on you are talking. I don't know if Sheriff Webb hired Billy Jones. That wasn't my question. Did you recommend Billy Jones for the SRO job? Correct. That is kind of a whole different job situation as far as hiring. Explain that to me. The SRO is hired through our office, but the school system does a contract for Mr. Jones. So the school system conducted interviews and everything. Okay, so they did the hiring. Yes, I see. Are you aware of whether there is any kind of agreement between EKCS and the county today related to home incarceration? I'm not aware. Are you aware of any agreements between EKCS and the jail today related to home incarceration? I'm not aware. Okay. Did you receive any training when you got elected as sheriff? Yeah. Yes. Okay. What kind of training did you receive? It is the state required training. Okay. Explain that to me. What that looks like. Mickey says, before I took over, I went. I think it was December of 2018 to the sheriff's conference. Where was that? I don't recall that year. They move it from year to year. So that is an annual training? Yes. Have you attended every year? Yeah, but one. Okay, what year did you not attend? COVID. Makes sense. What kind of training do you get at that conference? I mean, all different types. Can you give me some examples? Legal update. They go over PTSD and what signs to watch for and stuff like that. Now, I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm not sure that an annual conference would qualify as training, but they do have, I've never been to a sheriff's conference first, but I know that they have a lot of these annual conferences. We see a lot of times, that guy that went to Florida or Louisiana or wherever it was, they had a big conference down there, and all of them was to come. Well, he ended up, there were so many of them that got drunk. It's like this big alcohol party. Lawyers have these kind of conferences too, and it's big old, everybody stays in a hotel, and it's alcohol, alcohol, alcohol at most of these things. And they have like speakers, like they'll have one speaker at this time, and then they'll have another speaker, and then they'll have another speaker, and they'll have like a workshop at a certain time. But I don't know if that stuff is necessarily mandatory. Like I don't know if he would necessarily, well, not just him, but I don't know if they would get like a certificate of training showing that they, completed so many hours in this specific training. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I'm just pointing that out. Anyway, legal update. They go over PTSD, what signs to watch for, and stuff like that. What about supervising employees and training about supervising employees? Yeah, explain that to me. They just go over and talk about, make sure that, you recognize your policies and stuff like that. Question. What do you mean by recognize your policies? Mickey says, just make sure they are up to date and stuff like that. Do you believe Letcher County Sheriff's Department's policies to be up to date? To the best of my knowledge. Aside from attending that training, did you anything else ready yourself for the sheriff's position as far as training goes? Are you asking at the beginning or the whole time? Well, you got elected and you are about to become sheriff. I'm wondering what all you did to ready yourself for that position. You've talked about going to a state required training. Yes. When did he go to the state required training? Or was that the conference that he's saying that is? Because he's already said he didn't go to any of the other training. The only training he did was the fitness training. And we see Mickey, I don't know how Mickey passed that fitness training. Don't you have to run like a mile in under like 4 minutes or something like that? Ain't no way he did that. No way. Not recently. My opinion. Anyway. Yeah, I came over and kind of shadowed Sheriff Webb a little bit. Okay, anything else? Not that I can think of. What about any efforts when you became a sheriff to review or revise any of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department's policies? Can you ask that again? Did you review or revise any of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department's policies at the time that you became sheriff? Yeah, I familiarized myself with the policies. Yes, all of them, and I have through the years. Do you remember revising any of them? Policy changes? Or Mickey says policy changes. So I don't know. As soon as I took over, is that what you're asking? So in 2019, when you became sheriff, did you revise any of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department's policies? I can't recall. Did you know Ben Fields prior to making that recommendation that he be hired as a sheriff's deputy? Work? Yeah. What do you mean by work? He worked at the jail, and I worked as court bailiff. So you knew him through your work at the courthouse? Yes. What did you think of him at that time? Nice guy, polite, professional, always at work, just an all-around good guy from what I know. Were those the reasons why to hire him for the bailiff position? Yeah, he was dependable. And was that also the reason why that you recommended him to Patty Stockham to work for EKCS? Yeah. All right. Did you know any of Ben's family? His dad, Jerry Fields, was a long-time constable. He was a real respected man in the community. And his mother, Nell Fields, as far as anybody else, I didn't really know his family that well. He had a sister, Holly, that worked for the courthouse too, correct? And I think I accidentally called her Patty or something before. Her name was Holly. Mickey says, not at that time. I don't. Yeah, she might have worked at the clerk's office. Okay. Prior to recommending him to Sheriff Webb, had Ben Fields ever been to your house before? I don't recall. Okay. I understand that you have maybe a weekly poker party. Here's the card, players. Mickey says, I wouldn't refer to it as a poker party. Well, what would you refer to it as? It's a gathering of friends and individual, you know. We played rook there. We played cornhole there. We have had fish fries there that we fed the whole community. My neighbors' wives have come up and played rook, and we gather outside around the fire pit. It is just not poker all of the time, is what I'm getting at. Have you invited Ben Fields to any of those gatherings that you just described prior to recommending him for Sheriff's Department position? I don't believe so. Okay, I guess after he became a deputy sheriff, did you invite him to some of those parties, correct? You did invite him to some of those parties, correct? Yeah. Did you know any of Ben's family who were working at the jail at the time that you recommended him for deputy sheriff? His wife, Angie. Were you aware of any disciplinary issues related to his work at the jail? No. I spoke to the previous jailer, Don McCall, and Don says he's a great guy. No issues in his employment. Ha! Don. Don't believe you, buddy. Okay, question. And after Ben Fields applied for the position with the Sheriff's Department, part of that employment process was doing some a lie detector test or something of that nature. Listen up, y'all. Mickey says, yes, that is the pre-pops. The pre-pops. Do you remember whether you ever reviewed his pre-pops report? Yeah, I'm sure that I have looked at it. Mickey's lawyer jumps in. Just for the record, are you talking about the actual questions and answers, or are you talking about the cover letter that says whether or not they passed? His lawyer already knew what was coming. Listen up, because this is where I about fell out of my chair. And I'm going to try to read this without getting so upset. Question. I guess the report is more than one page. What I saw in the records that you produced. So I guess the whole report. Did you look at that report, Mr. Shaw? If you didn't, that's fine. Mickey says, I don't know. She asked me a question, and the polygraph is multiple levels. Question. Did you look through the polygraph? Yes, the questions. They give you a big packet before you take it and stuff. Mr. Shaw. She's not talking about your polygraph. Did you review Ben's, or did you just rely upon the report? Answer. No, I just relied on the report of the examiner. Question. In discovery, you produced a file of stuff that represented Ben Field's personnel file. Do you recall that? Yeah. And included in that was a report that included some questions and answers from Ben Fields. Do you recall that? Mickey says I'd have to look at it. I can't recall. Like you just said, it is a lot. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, he did. Oh, yeah, they did. The lawyer sure knew what she was referring to. Mr. Shaw. And I don't know that you would have all of that in his personnel file. They do the review, and I think they mark some of it. But go ahead and ask your questions. Do you recall seeing in Mr. Fields' employment history an admission by him that on at least one occasion that he consumed alcoholic beverages while at work at the jail? Do you recall seeing that? I don't recall. Question. Within those documents that you produced, do you recall seeing an admission by Mr. Fields that while he was employed at the Letcher County Jail, he engaged in sexual contact during the work hours at the detention center? He admitted to this in his polygraph, so it didn't come back as a lie. Oh, so he's been drinking down at the jail on duty, and he's been having smacks with his wife, Angie, in the jail. And it's going to show you. Question. If you had have seen that, would you have considered those to be red flags? Mickey says, that examination, the report that they send in, they recommend suitable. Who is they? Mickey says, it's the DOCJT, I believe. So the DOCJT is the one, is who the entity that's responsible for giving the polygraph. And you have a deputy who's admitting to drinking alcohol on the job and sleeping with his wife, who is also a Letcher County jail employee. Oh, they're breaking policies all over the place down there. Mr. Shaw, is anybody else as outraged at this as I am? Let me go over here and see. Yeah, Christy Cunningham. Ow! This should show the people that the sheriff and cops are so corrupted. Oh my word, seriously, drinking on the job. And he admitted to this. He admitted to this stuff in his polygraph. And this was when he got hired, y'all. This was when Ben Fields got hired. Not now, after he's been convicted. This was when he got hired. How the hell is Mickey Stines and the ankle monitor the only two other entities named on that lawsuit? How is this DOCJT and anybody else anybody else that's related or responsible. I don't know how they've done that and they've gotten by with it all. Because this is just absolutely, oh no, she ain't fired. Mrs. Fields should have been fired too. No, she got a better job. They gave her a better job in the courthouse. Not yours, Miss Field. My son said, Miss Field? Not your teacher. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, you know they talked about it at the poker parties, honey. And think about it. He's sitting here doing this deposition and he's got Daniel Dotson sitting right there next to him. So Daniel heard every single word that he said in the deposition. So you think the judge didn't know? I mean, these people are all tight. And we're going to hear, hey, honey, they got Edison Banks. They got Jamie Hatton. Jamie Hatton was the one who wrote the termination letter for Mickey. I better not get ahead of myself here. Okay. Who is they? It is the DOCJT, I believe. Mr. Shaw, that is a state background check and state examination. Okay, so the state messed up. And if they let him get by with his polygraph and his admissions, who else are they letting by with it? What else are they covering up? And the state police refused to take up this investigation against Ben Fields. Then why the hell were they giving the investigation Mickey Pew Pew and the judge? Because the state police came back and told Mickey no, they would not investigate Ben because they worked too closely with them. They didn't want their hands in it. It was too much of a conflict of interest. So why the hell is the state police in charge of the investigation with Kevin and Mickey? That don't make a bit of sense. You won't investigate Ben and the SMEX offenses that he was committing, but you're going to investigate Mickey and the judge. That makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, that is fine. I was just wondering, had you seen that information that he had consumed alcoholic beverages and he had engaged in sexual contact during work hours at the detention center? Had you known that, would you consider that as red flags in hiring Ben Fields? Mickey says, they send a report saying that they are suitable for the job. Who sent that report saying he was suitable for the job? I have got reports that says is not suitable for the job. So I took that as the state recommendation that he passed their exam. Really? Wow. So if Ben was suitable for the job with his admissions in a state polygraph and a state background check, who, pray tell, was deemed not suitable? I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that. I think there should be a civil lawsuit against whoever did that polygraph test. Unbelievable. Sorry, y'all. This just enrages me. Does it not you all? I mean, is this not like crazy? Am I the only one that thinks this is outrageous? This is just unbelievable. Question. I understand that, but that is not my question. My question is, had you known that he had consumed alcoholic beverages while at work and engaged in sexual contact during work hours of the detention center, would you have considered those red flags in hiring Ben Fields? That is my question. Mickey says, yeah, I would not condone that type of activity on the job. But your testimony is that you weren't aware of that. Is that correct? Until today? Mickey, ask that again. Have you ever heard anyone say that Ben Fields? No, absolutely not. Before today? That wasn't your question to me earlier, Mr. Shaw. And she is not talking about the other day when you listened to Fields' testimony about he and his wife would engage in sexual activity. Answer. That wasn't your question. You said when I first hired him, earlier, I think, was the question. Right. Now I'm just trying to figure out when you became aware of that. It sounds like maybe when you listened to Ben Fields' deposition testimony was the first that you heard about it? Yeah, that was the first I heard about it. Okay, I have another document here. Do you recognize this document? Yeah. What is this? It looks like he received the office policy. Okay, I was going to send you that earlier form that we looked at. It required someone to verify that they both received and read the policy manual, but this only requires that they verify that they received a copy. Do you know when or why that changed? So before, the policy was they had to verify that they both received and read the policy manual. But then they must have changed it to where they verify only that they received a copy. So they just did away with receive and read. Can't make this stuff up. Do you know when or why that changed, Mr. Shaw? I'm not for sure. So that was the lawyer answering that. Question. Okay. And this looks like it was signed by Ben Fields on April 13th of 2020, correct? That's what it looks like. But that was some 15 months after he had already started working for the Letcher County Sheriff's Department, correct? Yeah. So why did you wait so long, over a year, to give him a copy of this policy manual? Can I ask you a question? Just answer my question. Mr. Shaw jumps in. He wasn't the sheriff that hired him, so it is not his responsibility to give him the policy. There may be something else. Question. This is all that I saw in the file. Mickey says, I don't know if Sheriff Webb gave him one or not. He should have. Okay. The only thing that I saw on the file as far as him having received a copy was dated April 13th, 2020. Mr. Shaw, tell her you don't know. Mickey, I don't know. Sorry. Question. Okay, that's a perfectly fine answer. Are deputy sheriffs, are they will employees, meaning can they be terminated for any or no reason, or do they have to be terminated for cause? I was just asking him. Mr. Shaw, I don't know if he knows the answer. Are you talking about an action under the police officer's Bill of Rights? No, I'm just talking about at the Letcher County Sheriff's Department. Can deputies be terminated for any reason or no reason, or do they have to be terminated for cause? You'd think Mickey would know that, being the employer. I mean, I'd want to know. If you know. I'm not for sure. Mr. Shaw, the police officer Bill of Rights only applies in certain situations and doesn't apply in others. Okay, I know that you said more things happen than just playing poker. You invited male deputy sheriffs to some of those parties at your house where you played cards, correct? Yeah. Okay, and that included Jason Eccles and Ben Fields, correct? Yeah. Any other deputy sheriffs that you invited to those gatherings? Mike Infuse. Okay. Was he a deputy sheriff? Court security officer. You keep calling them deputies, but court security officers. Question. And I guess impression was, were there Letcher County sheriff deputies who has a specific role as a CSO? Is that correct to think of it that way? That is a true statement, yes. Anyone else aside from Deputy Infuse? Charles Fernandez. Okay. Anyone else aside from him? I don't recall. What kind of role did Charles Fernandez have with the sheriff's department? He was a court security officer also, and a special deputy at one time. What does a special deputy mean? It is a deputy that does not receive payment for their services. They just volunteer. He's had a sheriff's deputy vehicle at his house for like what? Since before the flood. Okay. He did that during the flood. He done relief and stuff like that. When you are working as a home incarceration officer for EKCS, did you ever invite any women who were on home incarceration to your house during one of those poker games? Absolutely not. Okay. Do you recall a girl named Jennifer Fleming? Yeah, I know Jennifer real well. So does Mom. Mr. Daniel Dotson jumps in and says, does he remember? And the lady says, yeah, does he remember someone named Jennifer Fleming? I know a Jennifer Fleming. Did you ever come to your house for any of these gatherings? See, there's another typo. Did you ever come to your house for any of these gatherings? That's not what that should say. They're talking about Jennifer Fleming. So I hope they go back and fix all this, but I don't know if they can or not. Not that I am aware of. That would just drive me insane to have all these typos. I can't stand it. Question. Okay. How many of the deputy sheriffs, aside from Ben Fields, has that designation of CSO? I think I have heard Ben Fields, Jason Eccles, and Mike Infuse. Does anybody else aside from them in the time that you have been sheriff? Keith Smith. Could I see my employment list that I provided? I don't have a copy of it. Well, that would assist me, Mr. Shaw. Just answer based on your recollection. Mickey says, I don't recall. Question. Does CSOs get paid more or less than other deputy sheriffs? Well, it all depends on job performance. I mean, I worked with Sheriff Webb for 16 years and only made $12. And they hired a new guy in when I was working for them. Mike Infuse was actually who it was. They paid him $12.50. He hadn't been there none, and they paid him more than me. So it all depends. Pay rate depends is varied. Sounds to me like he still had his panties in a bunch over that. Question. Okay. So are CSOs paid by the hour? Yes. Okay, so here's a question I've got. A lot of these officers, like Mikey Dingus used to be the court, he was the chief of police in Neon, but he was also the school security officer at Martha Jane Potter. Somebody else in Whitesburg, I saw somebody put a comment in Speak Your Piece, and they said they were working as a city police, I think it was city, and working school security, but they only show up, like Mike Dingus only showed up in the morning. He would show up in the morning before drop off, and he would stay throughout the drop off period. And then once school started, I don't know how long he stayed after school started, but then he would leave and he would go to the city and sit in City Hall or whatever he did. And then at the end of school, he would come back and he would be there for pickup and school being let out. And the comment that I saw in Speak Your Piece was like, how are they getting paid? Are they getting paid hourly that they've worked all day at the city on the police? And then do they get paid all day as a school resource officer? Or do they only get paid for that 1 hour in the morning and that 1 hour in the afternoon that they are there? Because if they're getting paid all day and they're working another job, I would think that that would have some kind of a conflict. But that's just a question I had. Okay. And Ben Fields was a full-time employee? Yes. And were those other CSOs that you referenced, were they all full-time employees? I don't recall. Were you a full-time employee during the time period when you were a deputy sheriff? Yes. And what does that mean? Are there set hours that you work from 8 to 4:30? What does it mean as far as scheduling goes? There's different schedules, you know. I don't know what you're asking. Well, I'm talking about CSOs, court security officers. And let's be specific to after that you became sheriff. Let's be specific to Ben Fields. Okay. Did he have a time of day that he was supposed to report to work and an hour that he got off work every day? How did his schedule work? 8 to 4:30. Okay, so those were the hours that he was working for the sheriff's department. Yes. Was that true for the other CSOs as well in the time that you were sheriff, Mr. Shaw? If that you recall. Question. Jason Eccles, did he work 8 to 4:30 too? Yes. Keith Smith, did he work 8 to 4:30? No. There were some days that he had to leave early. Okay. He was an EMT, paramedic. Okay, Mr. Shaw, are you talking about since that he has been a sheriff? Yeah, for those specific people. Mr. Shaw, if I recall, I think there was some other testimony at times the courthouse closed at 4 opposed to 4:30 at different times. Yes. Question. As far as the pay goes, does AOC pay the sheriff's department, which then pays the BCSOs? I don't know if it is AOC. S. I am always due, ... I'm pretty sure it forms with local fees. I don't even know how that makes sense. Question. What do you mean by that? Answer. You get a reimbursement for these employees on the hourly so much. Question. And who is doing the reimbursing? I don't recall. So you turn in some paperwork to, actually, LaShawna turns the paperwork in for me. Okay, who's LaShawna? She's the bookkeeper and office manager at the office. LaShawna's like got job security. She's been there through different sheriffs. And she's like the only one that knows how the place runs, in my opinion. So he kind of had to keep LaShawna on whenever he became sheriff because he didn't know how to run the place. He wouldn't have known what he was doing. So I think LaShawna she's the one who runs that whole office, and she's ran it for years. She's the bookkeeper and office manager at the office. For the sheriff's department, yes. So she turns some paperwork in about hours worked, and then the sheriff's department get reimbursed? Yes. I want to talk about our involvement in getting Ben Fields the position with East Kentucky Correctional Solutions. Yes. So did you recommend Ben Fields for that position? Yeah. Could you no longer work that job after that you became sheriff? Oh, yeah, no way. Why not? The job as sheriff is 24/7 hectic. I mean, one day my phone only goes back to 2 p.m., and I had 186 calls from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So it's just too hectic. I couldn't juggle. I worked 3 jobs. I just couldn't juggle all of it. So much money they couldn't handle it. Question. So you decided to recommend Ben Fields for that job. What do you recall about your decisions with Patty? After that, I won the election. She was disappointed and she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need somebody. Can you find somebody? I told her that I would look around. Man, I would have loved to have had a job like that. Okay, what did you do next? I found somebody that I thought would be good for the job. I called her and said, hey, he is a great guy, all around good guy. He ain't much one for character judging, is he? He has worked at the jail, and I told her that I had checked with the previous jailer and nothing. Old Don McCall must have missed the drinking on the job and the tail in the closet. Oh, it just makes me so mad. Makes me so mad. Question. I guess, did she know that he was planning to become a deputy sheriff by that point? Yes. And so I guess she agreed to hire him, as far as you know. As far as I know. And you actually trained Ben Fields for that EKCS position, correct? I let him shadow me. Okay, what do you recall of that? Basically, when I do my house arrest on Wednesday at 4:30, I have everybody report. I would show him the paperwork, the forms. See, everything is different now. They do GPS now. I don't believe that I was ever part of GPS. My old first house arrest box was almost as big as that TV. I mean, no joke, it was a white box this big. You had to have a manual key to turn it on, and you had to have a phone landline. They wasn't none of this tracking people. It would only let them get 100 feet outside their residence, and it would tell you if they had a violation. Cut the strap, unplug the box, stuff like that. So I went over all of that paperwork with him and all of that stuff. Okay. I showed him how to hook up, how to collect the money, do the receipt, mail it in. When I first took over, I would have to mail in money orders because Patty didn't have a bank account. And I would mail in the money orders to her. Now, is that not a big red flag? Patty didn't have a bank account for this business, and the county was running a house arrest program, and they didn't have no bank account to put this money in. Are you serious? I mean, what kind of place are we running here? All right. Okay. Were you aware of Ben Fields receiving any other training aside from the training that he got from you? I am aware. Okay. Were there any EKCS policies or procedures that you reviewed with Mr. Fields? No, I didn't. Aside from that initial conversation with Patty Stockham that you already described, were there any other discussions that you had with her about hiring Ben Fields? Not that I can recall. I guess, were you aware as prior to February, as of 2022, were you aware of Ben Fields performing services for EKCS while he was in the courtroom and during a period of time when he was working as a bailiff? I don't understand your question. Prior to February of 2022, when you terminated Mr. Fields, I guess there should have been a you there, aware that there were times when he would perform services for East Kentucky Correctional Solutions while he was also in the courtroom and working as a bailiff. One more time, sorry. I'm a little confused on your question. I'm not trying to be difficult, but okay. Prior to February of 2022, when you terminated Fields, were you aware that there were times when he was performing services for EKCS while also in the courtroom and working as a bailiff? Were you aware of that? I don't recall. Okay. Mr. Shaw, you are not, and then it fades off. I guess I will just object to form. Question. Were you aware that Fields performed services for EKCS while wearing a Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy uniform? Mr. Shaw. If you know, I mean. Mickey. Ask your question one more time. Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. You bounce around a little bit for me. Like I said, a little bit of stress. Question. I understand. I do, and I am happy to repeat any time. Were you aware that Ben Fields, was performing services for EKCS while he was wearing a Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy uniform? No, I don't recall. You don't recall being aware of that? If Ben Fields was wearing a Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy uniform while performing services for EKCS, would that have been a violation of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies? I need some clarification. Okay, if Ben Fields was working someone up on an ankle monitor, doing something that was within his duties for EKCS, while wearing a Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy uniform, would that have been a violation of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies? Yes or no? I mean, when is he doing that? I don't get your question. At any time, if there is some sort of decision. Answer. Is it 4:30 when I get off at sheriff's office? My sheriff didn't require me to go all the way home and come back with a personal truck and personal clothing. But now, if I was out after hours, I was in personal clothing and my truck at times. If it was something on the way home, my sheriff would give me permission. And hey, yeah, you can do that. They would let us go to the grocery store. That wasn't quite my question, but that is helpful to know. So you are the sheriff? Yes. And Ben Fields is the EKCS home incarceration officer. Uh-huh. Question. Is he allowed to perform services for EKCS while wearing a Letcher County Sheriff's Deputy uniform? Mr. Shaw. She is talking at the courthouse or any time. I understand what you were saying. Answer. If somebody is in court and they say, hey, question. So does it matter in different situations? Is it okay? In other situations, it is not okay? Is that what you're saying? Mr. Shaw. Did he ever call you and ask you for permission to stop by on the way home to check something out? Mickey says yes. Mr. Shaw. Like you did? So it is the same practice that you had? Mickey. Yes. Sorry. So you are saying that if Ben Fields were to be wearing his deputy sheriff's uniform while performing services for EKCS, he did it with your permission? Man. Mr. Shaw. Objection. Go ahead if you know the answer. I don't recall. What is the policy of the Letcher County Sheriff's Department about wearing a uniform while performing services for some other businesses or business? Mr. Shaw. I think he's already testified what the practice is. Question. That was not my question. What is the policy? Do you know what the policy is? Answer. You have got me confused with your line of questioning. You are bouncing around so much, I don't know what you're asking. Question. I'm trying to figure out how to frame the question in a way that you can answer it and understand it. So, was Ben Fields allowed to wear his deputy sheriff's uniform while performing services for EKCS at any time or at any circumstance? Mr. Shaw. In the courthouse, out of the courthouse. Question. Anywhere? Was there ever a situation where that was okay by you? Yes. What is the circumstance where it would have been okay by you, as sheriff, for him to be performing services for EKCS while wearing his deputy sheriff uniform? Answer. If he was at the courthouse. Question. Okay. So he was allowed to perform those services for EKCS while he was at the courthouse wearing his uniform? Yes. Is there any other places that he was allowed to perform services for EKCS while wearing that uniform? Was just at the courthouse, or was it at any other places as well? I don't recall any other places. Okay, so to your knowledge, the only time that he would have been performing services for EKCS in his deputy sheriff's uniform would be if he was at the courthouse. Is that correct? Mr. Shaw. And after work hours? Well, didn't hear him say that yet. Mr. Shaw. Yeah, he did. He talked about himself doing that with Sheriff Webb, but I didn't hear him say that he allowed Fields to do that. Mr. Shaw. You are trying to confuse the witness. Question. I am not. I truly am not. I'm trying to get a straight answer. Answer. Well, you've got me confused. This is Mickey. Because I don't know what you're asking me. Question. Deputy Sheriff Fields. He is wearing his deputy sheriff uniform. I think I understood you to say that he is allowed to wear that uniform and perform services for EKCS if he is at the courthouse. Is that correct? Mr. Shaw. No! Ms. Baxter, you are not testifying. He is testifying. Mr. Shaw. Quit trying to confuse the witness. Miss Baxter. I truly am not. Mr. Shaw. He told you what the practice was. Ms. Baxter. No, he hasn't. Mr. Shaw. Yes, he has. Ms. Baxter. Well, I am confused now then. Mr. Shaw. What the practice is, and did the practice change after you became sheriff? Mickey. You have got me confused. I don't know what she's asking. Daniel Dotson chimes in. She is asking you, is it okay for Ben to wear that uniform and hook somebody up on an ankle bracelet? Mr. Shaw. At the courthouse? Is that okay? Mickey says, when? Question. This is the female. At the courthouse, any time of day. Mr. Shaw. Before work hours or after? Mickey. See, when I come out at midnight or on the weekends, I was in plain clothes. But when I just got out of court? Question. So you are saying it matters what time of day? Mr. Dotson. Oh, Daniel. She's not asking you what that you did. She was asking you what the policy was as to Ben Fields. Mr. Shaw. What you would allow Ben to do? Answer. I can't allow him to wear the uniform when he is out working for house arrest at any time, just going around and stuff. I don't know what you're asking. Question. Okay, so that was not allowed. I think I heard you say earlier that there were some circumstances where it was allowed. What would be the circumstances where it was allowed? I think I heard you say if he is at the courthouse and it is right after work hours. Is that accurate? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. It's okay. This is Mickey. It's okay. I am really not trying to be sneaky. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So, aside from those two, to make sure that we have got it in black and white, if it is during his deputy sheriff work hours, or if it is immediately thereafter and he is still at the courthouse, it is okay for him to wear that deputy sheriff uniform, correct? Does that mean at all other times it was not allowed? He was not allowed to wear his deputy sheriff uniform and perform services pre-EKCS, like hooking someone up and so forth. Now, see, look here. Look where they messed this up. Look here. That's got an A there as the answer from Mickey. So, do y'all see that? That's the answer from Mickey. But that's not Mickey there. See? He was not allowed to wear his deputy shirt, like hooking someone up and so forth. See, there's the question from the lawyer. And then there's another answer. That A is Mickey. And that's supposedly Mickey. But where does the lawyer start in that paragraph? All right, question. Thank you. What about his Letcher County Sheriff's Department vehicle? This case is really too important for them to screw up the transcript. What about his Letcher County Sheriff's Department vehicle? Did Ben Fields have a vehicle from the Sheriff's Department? Yes. Did all the deputy sheriffs have a vehicle? Not all. How do you decide who gets a vehicle and who doesn't get a vehicle? Well, that has really just took place after the flood and stuff and the shortage and stuff. I'm getting ready to look to hiring 2 part-time, and they will probably not have a cruiser. They had so many, when the flood happened, there were places around that donated cruisers here. At one time, they had so many vehicles down there, they had way too many of them. At least that's my opinion. Okay, and I will be more specific because Chuck Fernandez has had a sheriff's deputy vehicle for a long time, or he used to have one. I'm sure he probably still has one. Okay. And I will be more specific. Between 2019 and 2021, in that time period before the flood, answer. I believe that all of them had one. You think that all of them had one? Okay. Were there any rules about what they were or were not allowed to do with their sheriff's department vehicles? Yeah. Coming back and forth to work. They would do transports for me. They would serve papers. If they were on their way home and needed to stop at the grocery store or something like that, could they take the deputy sheriff car on vacation to Florida? No, absolutely not. Okay. Could they take the deputy sheriff car out on the weekend, on Saturday when they are not working, to go to the grocery store and come back home? Not without asking me. Sure. Question. Okay. What about these situations where deputy sheriffs have outside secondary employment? Were there any rules about when Ben Fields was or was not allowed to use that deputy sheriff's vehicle to perform services for EKCS? Ask me one more time. Sorry. Were there any rules or policies about when Ben Fields was or was not allowed to use his deputy sheriff vehicle to perform services for EKCS? Mickey. He should be using it unless that he had approval from me. Now, see, he should be using it unless that he had approval from me. Doesn't even make sense. And you don't know if that's a typo. Was it supposed to say should not? He should be using it unless. See, that doesn't even make any sense. Okay. Do you recall him reaching out to you to get approval to do something for EKCS with his sheriff's department vehicle? Mickey. Maybe on the way home to stop and get ankle out of the creek. To get ankle out of the creek? Question. Where was that? Mickey. Out of like the creek. The GPS. They know where the ankle band is at. You know, the creek. Question. Did you say out of the creek? Yeah, like somebody cuts it off and throws it over the hill or something. Question. Are you recalling a specific instance, or just is that sort of speculation on your part? Can you recall any specific instances where Ben Fields called you up and asked you? No, I can't recall. Question. Was there ever any instance when Ben Fields was working as a sheriff's deputy that you told him that he wasn't allowed to use that vehicle or any sheriff's equipment in relation to his job with EKCS? Sorry. Can you recall any time that you told Ben Fields, slow down a little bit? Was there ever a time when you told Ben Fields that he wasn't allowed to use sheriff's department equipment or vehicle? I don't recall. I'm having an episode. Sorry. Ms. Baxter. Okay. Should we take a break? Let's take a break. Yeah, let's take a break. Question. I want to go through some policies with you that you produced in Discovery. Do you recognize this policy? Yes, ma'am. Was this policy in effect between 2019 and 2022? Yes. I guess what did you do to train deputy sheriffs on this policy? I gave them a copy of the policy and told them to read it and be familiar with it. Anything aside from that? Not that I recall. There is some reference in here, in her, to an oath of office. Do all deputy sheriffs take an oath of office, or do only some? And I am looking at the first page under personal conduct. A, oath of office. Do you see that? Yes. Do all deputy sheriffs take an oath of office? Yes. I want you to look at the second page under abuse of position. Yes. As we sit here today, is it your opinion that Ben Fields violated this provision of the policy related to abuse of position while he was employed as a deputy sheriff? What was the question again? Sorry, I was reading. Do you think that Ben Fields violated this provision of the policy when he was a deputy sheriff as we sit here today? Is that your opinion? Yes. And was he terminated for violating this policy? I would need to look at the termination letter. Here we go. Here's Jamie Hatton. Enter the county attorney. Question. Okay. We will look at that later, or at it later. And we can come back to this if you want to. There is reference in this section D to departmental position, identification card or badge. Do you have identification cards for deputy sheriffs? Yes. Okay. What is an identification card? That is it. Okay. I have not seen one of those before. On the second page, also under section 7, violations of ethical standards, there is some reference to investigating ethical conduct violations. Have you ever investigated an ethical conduct violation as sheriff? Ask me again. Sorry. Have you ever conducted an investigation of a violation of ethical standards since you have been sheriff? I don't really get what you're asking me, because I don't think a lot of this stuff. He even knew what it meant. Unbelievable. Question. Just, have you ever investigated an ethical violation of an employee under this policy? If you can recall. I don't recall. Question. Okay. There is some reference in here to the appropriate authority. Do you know who that would be? Daniel Dotson. What paragraph? Ms. Baxter. I'm in the same one. Violations of ethical standards that we have been looking at. Mr. Dotson. Paragraph 7. Correct. A. Answer. So this would have been Mickey. The appropriate authority. Question. Yeah. Who is the appropriate authority? If you know. Answer. I would imagine that would be me. Question. Okay. That is kind of what I figured too, but I was curious. On the last page of this policy, there is some reference to training and including a component of ethics is all in-service training. What is in-service training? Where are you at now? Sorry. On the third page under note, training. Right here? Yeah. In-service is the training that the state requires every year and every 2 years for us. Okay, that is helpful. So that is state. So the second sentence says the department shall conduct annual in-service training on ethics. Do you see that? Yeah. Does the Letcher County Sheriff's Department conduct annual in-service training on ethics? No. I give them the policy and tell them to familiarize themselves, theirself, with the policy. On the front page, there's some reference to KACP. Do you know what that is? I don't recall the abbreviations. There's so many. Okay. There's also reference to KALEA. Do you know what that is? Daniel Dotson again. What paragraph again? Ms. Baxter. It is just up at the top in those little boxes. Daniel Dotson, CALEA standard. Is that what you're talking about? Miss Baxter. Yes. Yeah, that is what I am wondering. Hey, Bella, stop. No. Daniel Dotson, KACP 1.1. Okay. What is CALEA, if you know? I don't recall. Is the Letcher County Sheriff's Department, do you have any kind of accreditation? Is accreditation? I don't think that's spelled right, and it's messing with my head. Answer. I don't recall. Okay. I guess not to your knowledge. Yeah, not to my knowledge. At any time since you have been sheriff. Hang on, I gotta grab this from her. Quick. All right. At any time since you have been sheriff, have you made any revisions or changes to this policy? I don't recall. Okay. I think that you testified just previously that the Letcher County Sheriff's Department does not conduct annual in-service training on ethics. Mr. Shaw. Object to form. Question. Does the Letcher County Sheriff's Department conduct any annual in-service training whatsoever? On what? On anything. Is there any Letcher County Sheriff's Department annual training? The range training qualifications, pew pew. That's the only training they're worried about. And go on training with the dog. Qualification with firearms. We have all kinds of training for different computer systems, Narcan, I don't know if that's every year. You know, they have changed that so much. You got to do that. There is stuff with the DOCJT that the deputies can be a part of that reviews it every week. I think that counts as training. And that's the same entity that gave Ben Fields his polygraph. Knocked that out of the park, y'all. I mean, we have all kinds of training. I guess that I am asking specifically about training at the Letcher County Sheriff's Department. Provides on these policies. I guess that I am asking specifically about training at the Letcher County Sheriff's Department. Provides on these policies. The state does most of the training material. But I wouldn't think that the state would train deputies on the Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies, correct? I'm asking about annual training from the Letcher County Sheriff's Department on the Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies. Is there any such annual training? Daniel Dotson. And you are saying in the personal office of the sheriff's office, not state training or whatever? Question. I am talking about training of Letcher County Sheriff's Department policies. I don't recall. Okay, that's fine. Question. Let's look at this policy. I only have 2 copies of this. This one was attached to Fields' deposition also. Do you recognize this policy? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Was this policy in effect from 2019 through 2022? Yes. So this is a policy that governs secondary employment, correct? Yes. Okay. And this policy has 2 different species of secondary employment. Species? One, which it calls extra duty details. Do you see that? Bella, get down. And the other, which is called outside employment. Do you see that? So do you have an example of extra duty detail, secondary employment situation in the time that you have been sheriff? Has anyone applied to the sheriff's department seeking approval for a permit for extra duty detail services? Not that I recall. Okay. What about outside employment? Have any Letcher County Sheriff's Department employees sought approval for outside employment? Not that I recall. Okay. It looks like this policy requires for extra duty detail that the employer, the secondary employer themselves, have to submit a permit application for approval through the sheriff's department. Would you agree with that? Which one are you reading? I'm reading about extra duty detail, and there is a permit process described at the bottom of the first page. Yes, right there. Extra duty detail. As I read this definition, it states performance of law enforcement duties not within regularly scheduled hours provided to any business, person, or enterprise. The services that East Kentucky Correctional Solutions provided included law enforcement duties. Do they not? No, they did not. What kind of duties did they perform then? They are just monitoring the people on house arrest and reporting back to the court. So would you consider that to be a police or non-police nature? That would be non-police. You don't have to be a police officer to do that job, because there was a lady before me that wasn't a police officer that done it. Who was that lady? I think her name was Dottie. I remember her first name being Dottie. She was somebody in Letcher County? Yes, I think so. So can you give me some examples of what the Letcher County Sheriff's Department would kind of performance of duties would qualify by its extra duties details? It would be like security at the school, ball games. Okay, so is this the SRO position, what you described previously, or is that different? It could qualify as that. Okay, Did the folks that wanted to hire Letcher County Sheriff's Department personnel for security at the ball games, did they submit an application for approval of a permit? No. But under this policy, they were supposed to, correct? I have verbal. So you gave verbal permission. To who? Well, it didn't happen often. One of the road deputies might help with the ball game, and they'll pay. Who do they pay? They pay the road deputy. But under this policy, they are supposed to pay the sheriff's department, who then pays the employee, correct? You got me bouncing around. Where are you talking about? On the second page, towards the top, under that Roman numeral 3. All fees paid in connection with extra duty details will be paid directly to this agency, and the agency will compensate the officers in accordance with the agreed upon hourly rate. Do you see that? This SRO, yes. Well, I'm talking about the security at the ball game that you were just referring to. And my question is, for that performance of that duty, the said, what is that? I can't see it. The something deputy is paid directly. The money is not paid to the Letcher County Sheriff's Department. Is that correct? That's correct. They don't do that often. Bull crap. What is another example of a law enforcement duty? None that you can't think of any other ones? What about employment that is of a non-police nature? Can you give me an example of what that could be? Walmart, retail, gas station. Okay. Where, in your opinion, does EKCS fit between these different definitions for secondary employment? The later, the second one. Okay. So is it your testimony that working as a home incarceration officer with EKCS is work that provides no real or implied law enforcement services to the employer and is not performed during assigned hours of duty? Yes. Question. So in a situation where someone has got outside employment, Bella, come here. Quit. Sorry, y'all. Where someone has got outside employment, this policy requires that they submit. They have some kind of permission form. Do you see that on the last page? Yes. Says the department will develop an outside employment request form? Yes. Has the Letcher County Sheriff's Department got an outside employment request form? We don't. Sheriff Webb didn't have one. He would just do a verbal with me. But you were the sheriff between 2019 and 21, correct? Yes. And this policy was in effect from 2019 to 21, correct? Yes. That was one of the things that I was going to say earlier. Let me finish my questions before answer because it just makes for a more clean record. So you never developed an outside employment request form, correct? Correct. This policy requires deputy sheriffs who have outside employment to submit a statement indicating that no aspect of the employment could be considered questionable in nature, such as placement in compromising situation, use of police powers, or have the potential to bring discredit to the department. Do you see that under subsection D? You said D right here. Do you see that? Yes. Okay. Did you ever require Benfields to provide you with any such statement as provided for on that? Not that I recall. Subsection BD? Okay. And then I am looking at the next section here that talks about requiring that someone who works for the Letcher County Sheriff's Department who gets outside employment, they're supposed to provide a statement indicating the services rendered will not be connected with security work, investigations, or collection or depression, or repossession of property, and will not involve any law enforcement duties. Do you see that? Yeah. Did you ever receive such a statement from Ben Fields related to his work with EKCS? Not that I recall. It looks like, according to this policy, approval of outside employment has to be submitted and ultimately approved by the agency head. Would you be the agency head in this instance? Yes, ma'am. And it looks like there is also a requirement for officers who obtained written approval that they then resubmit their applications for reapproval on an annual basis. Did that happen consistent with this policy as to Ben Fields' work with EKCS? Not that I can recall. Have you ever had anybody submit any kind written form for approval of outside employment? Not that I recall. We can sit that one aside for now. Question. I have another policy. This is another one that we looked at with Mr. Fields. This is number 5. So do you recognize this policy? Yes. Okay. And was this policy in effect between 2019 and 22? Yes. This looks to be a sexual misconduct policy. And I am looking down under definitions of sexual misconduct. This includes sexual activity while on duty or stemming from official duty. Do you see that? Yes. And it also includes use of official position and official resources to obtain information for purposes of pursuing sexual conduct. Do you see that? Yes. I am looking at the second page now. A police officer, sheriff's deputy shall not, I am reading from D. Okay. Shall not engage in sexual conduct with another person who is in the custody of law, as such officer has supervisory or disciplinary authority over such other person. Do you see that? Yes. Do you agree with me that Sabrina Adkins and Jennifer Hill, while they were on home incarceration, were they in the custody of law according to this policy? Yes. And did Ben Fields have supervisory or disciplinary authority over Sabrina Adkins and Jennifer Hill while they were on home incarceration? Yes. So on subsection E, right below the one that I was just reading, it talks about sworn officers receiving specific training about sexual misconduct. Do you see that? Yes. So what kind of specific training did the Letcher County Sheriff's Department provide in the time that you've been sheriff regarding this policy? None that I can recall. Do you believe that Ben Fields violated this policy based on his actions that are subject in this litigation? Yes, absolutely. There is some information in here about reporting requirements. Do you see that under subsection F? Yes. Hey, Alan, come take her out for me, please. And there is some reference to, and I am reading from the third line, immediately contacting the internal affairs section. I'm just wondering, what is the internal affairs section for the Letcher County Sheriff's Department? We don't have one. Is there some other? Alan? I'm trying to. Don't, son. Well, don't let me see that again. Is there some other person or group of persons that is handing out to an internal affairs section? Let me ask it this way. Is there anybody else with internal affairs responsibility within the Letcher County Sheriff's Department? Not that I recall. Okay. Mr. Shaw, you said while within the Letcher County Sheriff's Department, Miss Baxter. Question. Did you terminate Ben Fields because of his violation of this policy? Mickey. I would need to look at the termination letter. Here it is. Question. Okay, I have one here, but I will say it is about 2 sentences. Whatever that I have got is about 2 sentences long, but we can get that out now. Mr. Shaw, there is 2 versions. Mr. Shaw is an attorney. Did he say that? There is 2 versions? Isn't it supposed to be there are 2 versions? I mean, not trying to be the language police. Miss Baxter. There is a suspension, and then there was his termination. Mr. Shaw. No, there was 2 versions of termination. The one that was the draft and the one from the county attorney had approved, and I am not really sure which is which. Miss Baxter. I think that all I have seen are these 2 from Ben Fields' deposition. I don't know if I've seen this one. Is this one that was produced? Is this one that was produced from the sheriff? Mr. Shaw. I think that what is in his file is different than what he was actually getting. Ms. Baxter. I don't think I've seen this. But, Mr. Shaw, and there was some confusion. Like one is a draft and one is a final after the county attorney was involved. That's Jamie Hatton. Mickey, I can clear it up. Hey, buddy. Mr. Shaw. Well, if you can clear it up. Question. Let's just go ahead and make that an exhibit because I've not seen that before. This will be exhibit 6. So this looks to be a letter dated February 2nd. I think this is the most detailed of any of the documents signed by you related to Ben Fields' termination. Is that correct? Yes. And I guess this does specify that you violated or that you terminated Ben Fields due to his violation of certain policies. Was it just the ethics policy that is referenced? Yes. Great job, Jamie Hatton. Answer, yes. Conduct unbecoming? Yes. Do you believe that Ben Fields also violated this sexual misconduct policy? Absolutely. Okay. Well, why didn't you say that in your letter? The county attorney. I got guidance from the county attorney. I sent this one down to him. He called me back and sent this one to use. And that is what he wanted. That is what he wanted. So that's what Jamie Hatton wanted. Okay, let's go back and look at the document that was marked Exhibit 4. The ethics policy. That is what you referenced in your, I think I see the conduct unbecoming an officer of page 2, subsection. Mickey, no. You have given me the wrong one. It's the ethic ones. 3. Sorry. Question. So I see that conduct unbecoming section there on the document marked Exhibit 3. Yes. So that section is the basis that you cited for terminating Ben Fields. Is that correct? Which one? Subsection 10, conduct unbecoming. Conduct of unbecoming. I just want to clarify that I'm looking at the right thing. On the second page of that policy under X, conduct unbecoming, that is the provision that you terminated Ben Fields pursuant to. Is that correct? That is the one that the county attorney recommended. Yes. Because I don't think highly of Hatton at all. So, just putting that out there. What do you call it? Just letting you know. Putting all my cards on the table. Well, did you agree with the county attorney? Did you agree with the county attorney's recommendation? That is the one that the county attorney recommended. Okay. Do you always consult the county attorney in employee terminations or disciplinary matters? Yes. Why? They are the county attorney. They give legal guidance. Hey, I am not an attorney. Okay. You don't have to be an attorney to discipline or terminate someone. Bella. Come on. You don't have to be an attorney to discipline or terminate someone. Was that unique to the Ben Fields situation since he was facing a criminal investigation? Or did you do that in all instances, is what I'm trying to figure out. That was unique to Ben Fields because criminal theft. Theft? Where's the theft? That was unique in Ben Fields because criminal theft. I don't understand that. So in a normal situation, I don't know what normal is, I guess, but in a situation that does not involve criminal activity, would you still consult the county attorney? Not always, but sometimes, yes. Okay. You are bouncing around on me again. I can't keep up. I'm sorry. Can I put this one back so I don't get it mixed up with everything? Sure. We can put these other ones aside for now. When did you first become aware of the fact that Ben Fields had engaged in some sort of sexual misconduct? I don't remember the exact date. Well, how do you recall becoming aware of it? A reporter called the office, and I talked to him on the phone. Do you remember who the reporter was? No. I guess, was that after the civil case had been filed? I had not received the civil case. That was the first time I heard of it, was the reporter. Do you know who Chris Triplett is? Yes, I know Chris. Okay. Were you aware that he had reported sexual misconduct by Ben Fields to the Letcher County Sheriff's Department sometime in mid-December? No, I was not aware of that. Did you become aware of that at some point in this litigation? I have seen it on the reports. Have you ever asked your staff or talked to the other deputy sheriffs to inquire whether that complaint had been made? Yes. Okay. And what was the response that you got? They said that he did not come in and file that complaint. What did they tell you? He has been in the office several times. He has been in trouble for years. I have seen him a bunch, and he has never mentioned any kind of sexual allegation. Okay. Does your office have any kind of procedure for documenting complaints if someone was to come in or call the office and make a complaint about sexual misconduct against a sheriff's deputy? Is there some sort of process for how that gets documented and investigated? Mickey, anyone that comes in to file a complaint, they are going to ask them to sit and wait on me and talk to me. Question, is that written in the policy somewhere? Not that I recall. Okay. How did you advise your deputy sheriffs and staff that is what they needed to do? I would tell them, I am the boss. If anybody comes in to complain, I want to talk to them. Okay. How often are you physically in the office? Every day. So you are usually in the office. You are not out, patrolling the streets. Yeah, I will respond to calls. Absolutely. Unlocks, wrecks, and stuff. But the majority of the time, I'm in the office pushing paperwork and stuff like that. Okay, so I guess it is your testimony that you are aware that Chris Triplett has been in your office to complain about various things on some occasions, but not specifically about Ben Fields? Mickey, I don't complain. Well, tell me why that he would be in your office. We serve warrants. We serve EPOs. We take property tax. There's all kinds of things he would be in. He has been a criminal in the criminal environment for years. We have always had to deal with him and stuff, so. Okay, I was wondering if he was to show up to your office. Has he ever showed up to your office to complain about anything to your knowledge? I don't recall. Well, let's look at this policy, and this is not one that we looked at. Do you recognize this policy? Yes. Okay. Was this policy in effect between 19 and 22? Yes. And so this looks to be a policy about how you address citizen complaints. My first question is to have you ever employed this policy to investigate any kind of citizen complaint to your recollection? Not that I recall. Mr. Shaw, this will be Exhibit 7. Question. Have you ever been made aware, aside from the reporter who called you up to notify you about Ben Fields, can you think of any other situation where you were made aware of a complaint alleging employee or department misconduct? Ask me that again. Sorry. Aside from Ben Fields, were there any other instance that you can recall when you made aware of a complaint alleging employee or department misconduct since you have been sheriff? I have received nothing formal in writing, but the county attorney tells me if somebody wants to file a complaint, to put it in writing. You go, Jamie Hatton. Question. Well, this policy doesn't require complaints to be in writing, does it? And I'm looking under procedure on the second page, sources of complaint. That does not require a complaint to be made in writing, correct? That is correct. Okay, under subsection 4B, there is provision about an informational public brochure that the Letcher County Sheriff's Department has developed to inform members of the public, had to provide the department with accommodations, suggestions, dissatisfaction, or complaints. Do you see that? B? Yeah, I don't see it here. I'm on the second page. On the second page, subsection 4, procedure B. So that is A right here. Yeah. That is where I am looking. It talks about an informational public brochure. Do you see that? Yes. Okay. Does Letcher County have any kind of informational public brochure to notify the community of how to provide the Sheriff's Department with a complaint alleging employee misconduct? Not that I recall. Says that these brochures will be maintained in all police, sheriff facility lobbies, sheriff's informational desks, etc. Does that refresh your recollection? Is there any such brochure? Not that I can recall. Okay, Mr. Shaw. Are you asking about websites also? Don't ever get on the website, the Letcher County Sheriff's Department website, and click the link, because it ain't nothing but a virus that will take out your computer. I'm saying it by experience. Question. I am just reading the policy, and it talks about a brochure. So, okay. Did I understand you to say that aside from Benfield, you have never kind of complaint? See, that's bad, guys. Whoever did these transcripts, they need a refund. Did I understand you to say that aside from Benfield, you have never kind of complaint alleging employee misconduct? Maybe that should say heard. I don't know how they got those two words mixed up, but is that correct? Not in writing. See, that's how they get everybody. The county attorney's saying has to be in writing. Can't take a complaint unless it's in writing. Make them put it in writing. But that ain't what all the things say. Doesn't have to be in writing. I'm biting my tongue real hard, y'all. I got so much I want to say, but I'm biting my tongue. Have you received any kind of complaint consistent with this policy? It would be in person. Have you received any kind of complaint consistent with this policy? Oh, okay. Had you received, I guess it must have mean had. Had you received any kind of complaint consistent with this policy, it would be in person, by telephone, or by email. Do you see that? Yes. So have you ever received any of those type of complaints? Yes. How many would you say that you have received? I don't recall. So what did you do when you received those complaints? The person that comes in and tells me that I tell them to put it in writing and see if they want to file a formal complaint. If they do, we go through that process. If I have never received one in writing, if they say no, I get their side of the story verbally, and I will tell them that I will talk to the deputy. Question. Okay, now that, in my opinion, the way that they do this is to discourage people from turning in any complaints. So if you go down there and you complain and they say, put it in writing. If you don't do a formal complaint, then it didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like if you're brave, you'll put it in writing. If you're scared or intimidated or, whatever, you're not going to put it in writing. You're going to go down there and talk to him and tell him about it. And then when he responds with that, you're going to get scared and you're not going to put it in writing. You're going to go away with your tail between your legs because you already know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? That's how I analyze that. Question. Okay, when you are references those complaints, wow, they really need their money back. Have any of those complaints alleged sexual misconduct? Not that I recall. Do you have like a file somewhere in your office where you keep documentation of those complaints? No. If it is not in writing, no. See? Question. You don't document complaints yourself? No. Question. I guess within the sheriff's department, I know you are the sheriff? Yes. Have you got a number of deputies? You have got a number of deputies? Yes. Is there any sort of supervisor deputy, or are they on the same level, so to speak? On the same level. So if there is any reference in this policy to like a supervisor, answer, that is me. Question, that is you. Okay, I got it. Have you ever investigated any citizen complaint made pursuant to this policy? I think that you just said that any time that you asked someone to write it down, they refused. So maybe you haven't. But has there ever been a time that there was a complaint and you investigated it? Mickey, if you call an investigation listening to the person, take the information, and then talking to the deputy and seeing what happened, yes. I mean, come on. You cannot make this stuff up. Joke. Okay. Did you work up any kind of report as a result of that? No. Okay. Also, inform the people that complain if they want to attempt to file criminal charges, they can see the county attorney, or we will get an outside agency in, and most of them decline that. Oh, okay. This is Mickey. Also, inform the people that complain if they want to attempt to file criminal charges, they can see the county attorney, or we will get an outside agency in. Oh, really? And most of them decline that. Well, the state police declined to investigate Ben Fields. What outside agency you gonna get? Most of them will say, I want you to talk to the deputy. Yeah, because you're discouraging them from coming forward. You're by this procedure, and you might as well say it was a policy that he had. This was how he handled complaints. He'd send them to the county attorney if they wanted to file criminal charges. But I can tell you now, Hatton would probably throw you out of his office. He is not a very nice man. I don't think, anyway. But somebody else might have a completely different opinion of him, and that's fine. All right. Most of them will say, I want you to talk to the deputy. Okay, let's talk about Ben Fields specifically. Okay. Was there any kind of investigation conducted by your office related to the allegations against him from late January, early February of 22? No, I just took the initial information. Question. There was no administrative investigation? Answer. Just what information that I got, I reviewed. Everything with the county attorney. Oh, just what information I got. I reviewed everything with the county attorney, and he gave me advice on what that I needed to do. The documentation of it is just this. That's nice. So Jamie Hatton was telling Mickey what to do with the Ben Fields. I mean, they were all involved in this. All of them. Question. And what information did you have aside from, I guess, a phone call from a reporter? And which reporter do you all think that was? What reporter do you guys think made that call to Mickey? Man, oh man, oh man. All right. Let's see. The documentation of it is just this. Question. And what information did you have aside from, I guess, a phone call from a reporter? Answer. I got a phone call from a reporter. You have got me bouncing back and forth. I'm trying to remember. I got a phone call from a reporter was the first thing. I believe that I called Mr. Fields and told him what was alleged. And then after that happened, Judge Kraft and Robbie Kinser came to my office and gave some information. So that's Judge Jimmy Kraft, who's the upstairs judge. So he would be the judge over a drug court for the felonies. He's also the judge who Ben Fields, whenever he did the escape warrant, that was in Judge Jimmy Kraft's courtroom. And Robbie Kinser came to my office and gave some information. I'm not sure on the details. After that, I consulted with the county attorney. Now, remember what the Kentucky Attorney General's investigation said. This female lawyer, sent the request for an investigation to the Kentucky Attorney General's office. And then they inquired into the investigation. They called Edison Banks. Matt Easter, remember the detective? He, in his report, and I've got it, baby. We can pull that report up and hold it side by side, and we can see where the discrepancies are. We can see where it compares and where it contrasts. Now, as far as what I remembered, it was different. If I'm correct, if I remember this right, Matt Easter called Edison Banks. Matt Easter, or whoever the detective was, called Bert Sloan. It was the detective, it was the Attorney General's office that called Michael Watts. It was the Attorney General's office that called during their investigation. Now, according to this, it was the other way around. That's a big, glaring red flag for me. All right. I'm trying to remember. I got a phone call from a reporter was the first thing. I believe that I called Mr. Fields and told him what was alleged. Oh, sorry. I consulted with the county attorney. I believe that he actually came over to the office, and LaShawna Frazier was with me, the office manager. Okay. Was this all on the same day? Mickey, yes, the evening. That is when that was produced. Question. So that was the day that all of the occurred. That would have been January 31st, 2022. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Shaw. For the record, you are discussing Fields' Exhibit 20, ? Ms. Baxter. Yeah. And we can make this an exhibit. I think we will make this Exhibit 8. Mickey. I also talked to the Commonwealth attorney at the time. Question, is that Edison Banks? Yeah. At the time, yes. Okay. And I want to talk more about that later, but since we are on that right now, anybody else that you talked to or any information that you've gathered as part of that investigation to Ben Fields? That day, we will start there, Mr. Shaw, or any other outside agencies contacted. Question. My question is anything that you did that day, Mickey. Once that I talked to Mr. Hatton, we done this. Brianna Cornett came in. Question. So Brianna Cornett actually came to your office? Yes. Question. After that, I spoke with Jamie and Edison, and they said, get the name and number. Do not take any information from them. We are going to talk to KSP and see if they will investigate it. KSP said, no, we are not going to investigate it. We work too close with you. I don't want an investigation of this magnitude done internally. So, Mr. Banks said that I'm going to get a hold of the AG's office. Mr. Banks told me the AG's office would take the investigation. I'm trying to remember the next step. Brianna came in and I got her name and number. She left. Question. Did she tell you? Give you anything more than her name and number? Did she tell you anything? I don't recall. You don't recall anything more than a name and number? No, because that's what Jamie Hatton told him. He said, don't take nothing but the name and number. That's just what he testified to. Did you take any notes when you talked to her? No, I did not, because I wasn't going to do the investigation internally. Question. Do you know her? Do you know her mother, Christy Fultz? Yes. Have you known her for a long time? Yes, I've known her well. Why do you say you know her well? Small community. Did you grow up and go to high school with her? She would be offended, but she is older than me. I might look a lot older. And you knew Brianna Cornett was her daughter? Yes, Brianna has been in the criminal system for years. Okay, thank you for that. And we will come back to some of that, I believe. I have another policy. Mr. Shaw, that will be 9. Question. Do you recognize this policy? Yes. This policy is called Training Directive. Was it in effect between 2019 and 2022? Yes. Okay, and this policy identifies a number of high-risk critical tasks. Do you see that? Yes. And it provides that each member of an agency will receive an annual block of training on each of the high-risk critical tasks identified. Do you see that? Yes. So did the Letcher County Sheriff's Department itself provide any block of training on these high-risk critical tasks? Not that I recall. Who would have provided annual training on these high-risk critical tasks? They all received the training by the state. And that is on an annual basis. Some is on an annual and some on every 2 years. That is the minimum of the state. Do you see on the second page under H, sexual harassment, internal sexual misconduct by officers is identified there as one of the high-risk critical tasks? Yes, I see that. So did the Letcher County Sheriff's Department provide annual block training on sexual harassment and external sexual misconduct by officers? Not that I recall. Do you know whether or not any of the state training included an annual block of training on sexual harassment and external sexual conduct by officers? Not that I recall. This says that all training shall be documented, and it references that each officer shall have a training file. I am looking under documentation. Yes. So does each officer have a training file? Yes, all of the training that they receive from the state is a file. They get a certificate from the state. They will have that. Okay. Was that training file amongst the documents that you produced in discovery in this case? I'd have to look. I'd have to see the documents to answer that. Okay. I am just going to do a follow request. If there is an additional training files that have not been, Mr. Shaw, a lot of times transcripts housed with the state. The state is who documents and keeps up with each officer because we have so much turnover with officers going to each agency. Yeah, they go from one department to another department to another department to another department. And if they hurry up and resign, before an investigation into them has happened, then the investigation doesn't even happen. They leave with a resignation, so then they can go get hired somewhere else. So if they leave Jenkins, they can go get on down there at the sheriff's department. They leave the sheriff's department, they can get on down there at Whitesburg City. You got one that went from Neon to Whitesburg. Now he's at the sheriff's department, and he can't put 2 and 2 together, in my opinion. Yeah, I know, y'all. Look, we are on page 115. Mr. Shaw, a lot of times transcripts housed with the state. Okay. I don't know that we have got it, but we request the transcript if we don't have it. The state is who documents and keeps. Okay. Question. Okay. Well, I am looking at subsection B of documentation here. It talks about agency files will contain a lesson plan, an outline of each in-house training session. Do you see that? Yes. Do you have any lesson plans or outlines for in-house training sessions? Not that I recall. Is that because there have not been any in-house training sessions on sexual misconduct since you have been sheriff? Object to form. Not that I recall. Okay. We can move this policy aside. Miss Baxter, this might be a good time to take a break if anyone wants a lunch break. I still think we are doing decent on time. Do you want to keep going? All right, y'all. We're going to break. We're going to take a break for now. And we will finish tomorrow. Oh, thank you all so much. Look here. We've got Lynette Eads trying to join. Don't know how. Sometimes it depends on what phone you're on or what you're on. Let's see. You just hit the join button. If you've got a little join button, if you don't, you can send an email to hillbillycrime@gmail.com and we'll send you the link. You can go in. There should be a little spot where it says memberships. Like you'll have different things on the homepage of Hillbilly Crime. If you'll go to memberships, you should be able to get in down that way. If not, just shoot me an email. We'll send you the link. Thank you. And then we'll send you the Discord link too. Gifted 5 Hillbilly Crime memberships. So if you guys got a membership, please reach out to Miss Heen and tell her thank you. Inside the purple purse. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Miss Eads. I absolutely love this channel. I wasn't watching any of the comments. I was reading. Odd and out. Thank you, Elizabeth, for reading this all for us. I'm thinking about all the people who have been violated by these people who were meant to protect. Just terrible. I hope this all comes out. Well, and it only comes out if we listen. You know, it only comes out if we read this. If we don't read this, you know, then we don't have... Hey, get off of him. Bella, get down. She's not mean to the kitties, but I don't like it when she pins them down. But it only all comes out if people are interested, if people are paying attention, you know, and we have to read these. Like, this sucks. This really sucks going through all this transcript. I've been reading it's 10 o'clock and we started at 7. So I've been reading for 3 freaking hours. and we're a little over halfway through. So tomorrow night we will finish part 2 of Mickey's, and we've still got Ben's and we've got Sabrina's to go through. Thursday night I'm going to go on Gavin Fish, and we'll be talking about these depositions, and sometime I'm going to go on STS this week. I'm not sure when exactly that is, but I'll let y'all know. Let's see. Turn the page. Gifted 1 Hillbilly Crime membership. Thank you. Turn the page. Anybody gets it? Tell her thank you. Woman of Steel. Super sticker. God bless you all so much. Thank you. Crafts, Chats, and Catastrophe became a YouTube member. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I just want to mention something real quick. Miss Amber, I got your stuff today. So she made me a Hillbilly Crime keychain. And then she made Mommy one that's got sweet tater in it. She made me a couple pairs of earrings. And she made me a couple things I put up there. And she made this, guys. Look at this. It's so awesome. And I'm so thankful. Nobody ever makes me anything or gets me nothing. Look there. Hillbilly Crime. YouTube. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Tomorrow I'll show the crafts that she made and my earrings. It's dark tonight. You can't see hardly anything. When I turn that big light on over top of me, it kills my eyes. All right, y'all. Most everybody's jumped off. And LS. Thank you, LS. Super sticker. And Roy Spalding became a YouTube member. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, y'all. We're going to pick this up tomorrow evening at 7, but we will meet you all here in the morning for the continuation of the Boswell trial. And we'll finish up Mickey's deposition tomorrow. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all your support. Love, love, love. Peace out, Girl Scout. See you tomorrow. Bye. I'm tired.